Unit studies are a great way to do family-style lessons that take a slow and simple approach to homeschooling and allow you to dig as deep as you want into a single subject for a period of time. This gives you the freedom to let your kids explore areas of their own interest. Today, I'm going to show you how we did our Western Pioneer unit study this last year and share the resources we use so you can see how to implement your own unit study. Hey guys, if you're new here, I'm Erin. I've got 4 kids ages 4 to 11. I love helping other homeschool moms find peace and joy in the journey of homeschooling by simplifying and focusing on what really matters. We've homeschooled from the very beginning, and we've used unit studies infused with the little Charlotte Mason methodology for the last couple of years. Many people, even in the homeschool world, have never heard of Charlotte Mason's style of homeschooling. Have you? Comment below and let me know if you've never heard of Charlotte Mason or if you've used her ideas in your homeschool. I'll explain parts of it a little bit later. Last week, I walked you through how to create your own unit study. Make sure you check out that video here if you missed it. There's a free lesson planning sheet that I introduced in that video that's also available in the comments again below. So let's take a look at the resources we used for our Western Pioneer unit study, and then I'll show you how we actually go about doing the lessons on a day-to-day basis. This is how we've done unit studies, but it could look totally different for your family. This is really just one idea to help you get started if this is something that's new for you. So first of all, looking at our planning sheet, you can see that we did this study for 1 month. I'm a big proponent of the Charlotte Mason style of learning and her idea of using living books. Living books are books that are written more in story format rather than textbook style to present information. This makes subjects like history and science and other things come alive, and it makes it more relatable and fun for your children as you learn together. It's amazing the amount of things that I've learned as we've gone through school books together. I'll put links in the description below so that you can find all of these resources for yourself if this is a unit that you want to try out with your family. So here's a list of the books that we used for this unit. This book, Daily Life in a Covered Wagon, follows the journey of the Larkin family as they travel west from Indiana to Oregon. It has a lot of beautiful photos and illustrations and even some journal entries about the hardships that they faced and what life was like along the way. I love the If You series of books by Scholastic for elementary age kids. This one is called If You Traveled West in a Covered Wagon. This whole series is written for kids from the perspective of what life was like for kids that lived during that time period or that historic event that it's covering. Next up is Great Pioneer Projects. This also has a lot of great information in it, but since we already were using the other 2 books, we really just used this book for ideas for projects. It has a lot of really fun things in here. One of my favorite history resources are these historical coloring books from Dover Publications. I have almost every one that they make. I grab the colored pencils and they sit down and color while I read aloud. They're pretty detailed, so they keep even the older kids entertained for quite a while. The last book we used for this study was our read aloud. We did Little House on the Prairie. I always like to have a fun fiction book. I purchased all of these books from a homeschool consignment store in our area, but you might be able to find some at the library or online using a used book resource if you want to save on the cost of buying books. For video and game resources, we watched some YouTube videos about some of the places the pioneers stopped at along their trail. I found this Oregon Trail card game at the clearance rack at Target last summer, and so I picked it up. And the kids had fun playing this game to kind of go along with it for some game schooling time too. Also, we've been watching the Little House on the Prairie TV series on Amazon a couple times a week as a family for fun. For one craft, we made our own handmade journals in the style of what the settlers used back at the time. And our kids kind of used it as they called it their COVID-19 journals, and they made a few entries to document our life during this historic time. Since we learned how most of what we know about the pioneers, we actually learned through journals, so it was a fun tie-in for that. I generally don't plan a whole lot for this category. This is where a little unschooling comes in our home. I love making sure the kids have lots of free time to play and be creative with whatever suits them at the moment. For example, our middle son, who's very kinesthetic, was inspired to learn how to start a campfire with his flint and steel. And one day he spent an hour trying to get a fire started. And when he finally did, we sat around the campfire for our Little House read aloud time that afternoon. We popped popcorn and tinfoil packets in the campfire. It's popping. We wrapped apples in foil and set them in the coals and let them roast while we did our reading time. And then we did our narration and gobbled up our apples. Our 7-year-old engineer son spent days designing his own covered wagon using craft sticks and pipe cleaners and paper. I just let him go with it. I didn't give him any instruction, and that's just what he loves to do. One day I found all of the kids in the back of the truck with our little pop-up tents, some sleeping bags and lanterns and snacks. At the end of the unit, the kids all wrote a paper about what they learned. They illustrated it, and then they did an oral presentation for their dad to practice some presentation skills. Field trips. Well, this unit took place right in the middle of the COVID quarantine lockdown, so we weren't really able to do any field trips this time around. We did have plans for us to go on a road trip at the beginning of summer and visit some of the places along the Oregon Trail, but with travel restrictions, that didn't quite happen this year. Sometime we hope to do that in the future. So that's it for our resources and activities that we used. Now here's an example of how a normal daily lesson would go. First, everyone would get a snack and we'd sit down together at the kitchen table or around the campfire. If anyone wanted to color a picture, we'd photocopy one from the Western Pioneers coloring book and get out the colored pencils. I'd read aloud a few sections of the If You Traveled West in a Covered Wagon book, or a couple pages in the daily life of the Covered Wagon book. After reading, I'd have one of the kids do their narration. Now this is where the Charlotte Mason method of learning fits in. This is where a child recalls out loud in as much detail as possible everything that they remember from what you read. After one child had a turn, I would ask the other kids if anyone remembered anything else. And I'd use little prompts for important things that they might have missed. And each day, a different child would get to go first. It's amazing how much information they retain when you do lessons this way. We would discuss what it had been like to face that aspect of life on the trail and choose a couple of the most important points from the lesson. I'd then have my oldest son write down a paragraph about what he learned in his history notebook. For my younger two boys, who need a little bit more assistance with writing, they'd help me pick out 2 or 3 main points and we'd come up with sentences together that I would write on the whiteboard and then they'd copy them down in their history notebooks. This is where the language arts comes into the unit study. You can spend as little or as much time as necessary helping the kids to understand things like proper sentence structure and spelling and working on grammar while they write in their notebooks. Or you can build in some creative writing assignments around the lesson as well. For the geography aspect of the study, we worked on memorizing all the states in the country over the course of the year. We used these laminated wall maps. Let me see. These laminated wall maps that I got on Amazon. We personally had other things that we were doing for science this year, so we didn't really build science into this particular unit. But you could tie in some science lessons about the wildlife that the travelers saw along the route, or learn about weather conditions that they might have experienced and how those things happen, or things like that. Be creative. Like I mentioned earlier, I always leave lots of free time throughout the day for the kids to explore more on their own and use their imaginations for creative play and projects. It's so important developmentally for kids to be able to learn by doing and in their own way. So much is learned just by playing, and I truly believe that we're failing our kids if we don't let them have time to play. One of the amazing things about homeschooling is that we have the freedom to allow our children to just be children and to not force them to grow up too early. So please take advantage of that and allow some free play time in your schedule. So there you have it. That's a look at one way to do a unit study. The possibilities are truly endless as far as what you can do a unit study about, as well as how to work them into your homeschool. You just have to find what works for you, what aspects you enjoy doing together, and make a plan. So if you like this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe for more videos just like this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Be blessed today. Bye-bye.